Welcome. Another was our third LinkedIn Live this summer. I guess now it's kind of fall after Labor Day. But welcome back, Kim. Good to do this again.
All right, great to see you again, Clark. Great to see all of our listeners, attendees as well for round three.
Yep,
Great to be
round
back.
three. I feel like we did a little bit like Star Wars, where we kind of messed around the order a little bit. We did like cold outreach, client meetings, then we like get more business from clients. But now we're kind of hitting that middle piece, that connector dot of building that strong relationship, right? From that cold outreach to get more business. Like, what's that nuance in the middle, especially in 2024, where I know you and I are both hearing it's harder than ever. The market is tighter, which all those things are true. Staffing is still happening. Recruiting is still happening. Agencies, some out there are really seeing some growth. And I think the common theme has been they didn't rely on their network only or referrals only. Like they had a system. They're always building, getting enough volume, always looking and trying to sift through where that next great relationship is going to come with, and then learning to kind of build on that. And those are the agencies that I'm hearing are getting business over and over again this year. So
that's a great point, Clark. And I think too, some folks were maybe guilty as charged back in 2022 of, there was such a high demand, right, of almost becoming order takers and maybe forgetting a lot of the mechanics or putting some of the mechanics on the back burner of what it is to have to go out and really from scratch, to get clients and then to the point you're saying, develop them and build those relationships for long term. Versus being that order taker. And again, it's harnessing the skills and then continually applying them in those mechanics.
Absolutely. And I think some of the feedback, especially that I've heard this summer from people going through the digital recruiter program, has been I'm having more conversation. It's like I didn't realize how much time it takes to kind of build that trust and build that relationship. And I think that's one of the themes of like things that remember as we go through this presentation today is great relationships aren't built overnight, right? You and I are both married, you longer than me, but you see the evolution in a marriage or even, with teams and all that. You have to kind of let these things breathe a little bit too. So we're going to go into all the strategies. We're going to go into tactics, but just keep that in the back of your head. Like these things don't happen overnight, but you got to start implementing and practicing them today. And that's the thing, and just letting things breathe. And some develop quicker than others and all that. And I think that's ultimately building the strong client relationships is just that persistence, patience, I think is key. So I just want people to kind of remember that, think of that as we kind of go through everything. Because ultimately in this kind of like, I need everything now environment that we have, that's maybe like the biggest overarching theme as like we go through everything here the next 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah, it is the long-term mindset for sure, and it's the long-term game. As we've seen, it will not happen overnight, unfortunately. Or if it does happen overnight, we're in a frenzy like we were in like 2022, which just doesn't happen. It's not the norm, right? We're more in a normalized type of environment today where we actually got to go get that business. And I echo what you said in my training classes. It's two things. It's how do I get new clients, and then oh, wow, I met with a prospect and they may or may not buy from me. What do I do now, right? How do I build the relationship to get them to buy? And then once they buy, how do I make them loyal? How do I make them repeat customers? What do I do to stay in touch? How do I outshine the competition? So,
let's get into it.
All right, let's do it.
All right, that's our intro. So, I mean, we'll cover, why do the quality relationships matter in sales, especially in recruiting, what prevents it from happening? And then what are the solutions to kind of creating some great relationships? These are the things we're going to kind of touch base on today. So this is an interesting stat. 19% of executive buyers believe that they're spending quality time with their salespeople, right? And that lives up to expectations. So one of the first things that I know we wanted to cover is to realize like, how low the bar is. And I think one of the things with how low the bar is that there's a lot of, and I think part of the reason I'm interested in what your thoughts are on this, Kim, is there's like, I feel like there's like we're programmed for like sales. There's like a programming everyone has for like what they think sales is. So a lot of people get into it and just do that. And a lot of time, maybe if they've seen it from TV or infomercials or whatever, you've seen a lot of maybe bad sales, or people take chances and risks because they can kind of get away with more, but people don't realize the pathway to kind of get there to that
Yes.
approach. So there's a lot of like bad advice, and I think that's how you get to this number.
Yeah, when I first saw this stat, Clark, at first it was kind of, you almost got a little, disheartened, right? Or disenchanted. And I thought, well, wait a minute, this is actually a great opportunity if you flip it around the other way. That means that, there's 81% of the opportunity to go and turn this around and actually provide value, to buyers, and provide value to people that are getting our services, right? And I think that that's oftentimes what we don't do, because to your point, and I like to use the car sales analogy. Nothing against car salesmen, but we've all been into a dealership to buy a brand new car, and this is where I think a stat like that comes in. You feel railroaded, you feel bamboozled, you feel like you're getting a hardcore sale, thrust upon you, versus somebody that's, sitting on the other side of the table, that's there to add value to you and inform and educate you to help you make the right decision, right? And that's where I think the 81% comes in. We have a great opportunity to be able to educate, inform, and provide value to them. It's going to set us apart from that stereotypical salesperson that's there just trying to, jam a sale, down your throat, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I think this goes into, if we were to hone in on for agency recruiters, right, specifically, because that's who you and I work with primarily, is we have to understand, to build better relationships, how do they currently view you and us and recruiters, right? And you have to realize that managers are getting approached by recruiters constantly. Whenever I have interviewed anyone or I've worked with that's been an internal recruiter or corporate recruiter, I mean, they get bombarded with pitches weekly, monthly. They've seen it all, and most people aren't intentional about that outreach at all, or strategic. They get a ton of transactional pitches. They have a bunch of empty MPC, right? They're sending their 30 best candidates, or they're sending an MPC for a lab scientist when the manager is actually in construction, right? It's like it's not targeted. They have their reputation as resume slingers, and they're in it for themselves. All they want is the fee, and that they're generally clueless about the actual business and hiring problems of that specific company. And that's kind of the approach. Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, and to your point, Clark, I think companies, staffing and recruiting companies can be guilty of, let me sign up and say yes to this business, and I'll figure it out later how to deliver upon it. And what usually happens, I'll say 8 times out of 10, is we don't figure out how to deliver on it, right? And we end up doing a terrible job. And then what does that do? It leaves a very poor impression on the client. So I think, again, we're, like you're saying, empty promises, sending over bad NPCs, resume slingers, signing up for work, saying we can do things that we really can't do, when in reality they'd have a lot more respect for us if we were honest about it and said, hey, we're not going to be a great partner for this, or we can't do that. Let me try to get you to someone that can, because ultimately things like that come back around to you, because they remember how you treated them and the fact that you were honest, versus doing things on the slide, and signing up for things that we're just clearly not good at.
Exactly. And I know we're going to get into some more of those, like under promise, over deliver, some of those boundaries, all that later in the slides, which is super important. But yeah, this is, again, how they view your competition, the landscape. That gives us the understanding, and we can build a strategy around how to kind of do the opposite of what they're seeing. And then that's what you can kind of start to build the trust, right, in the relationship.
Yeah.
So
Great
to get into that,
opportunity.
there's a ton of opportunity, and that's what's so fun about this, right? With the right strategy. And so, and the next thing is, what do your clients and prospects want? Right? They want to solve their problem, their business problems. They want, they want more revenue. They want to reduce cost, in efficiency, increase market share, right? They want to have to go to market quicker. They want, better hiring process. They want to reduce churn, have better retention. They want to get and build and train and keep great employees, right? To create revenue and to do all those things, so when you're engaging with them, what do they really want? They want to be heard, right? They a lot of times they just don't feel heard by an agency recruiter, and your job is to kind of figure out of all these things, what are they prioritizing? Where are their pain points? Right. So instead of pitching you, it's like make sure you understand like they want to be heard first.
Yeah, yeah. It's not about you and your features and your benefits of your company, because think about it. At this point, we don't really know what their business problems are or what they want. As we're starting to reach out, we have to ask and listen to surmise that. Then features and benefits can become important. But up front, it's like telling someone, again, back to the car analogy, that hey, this car comes in pink, yellow, and blue with heated seats and all that, and you could care less about that. All you care about is a V8 engine, right? So we have to understand what's important to them and what problems that they have. And I tell all my folks in training, before you even reach out, Clark, before you even make the very first cold call, put this hat on, right? Basically, this slide, put it on as a hat. Think about it as approaching them from the standpoint of, they want me to solve a business problem. They want me to deliver a result to them. That could be any one or of the things on the side bullet list there, or it could be other things that Clark and I haven't thought of. But that's the way to approach it. They've got a problem, or they wouldn't be engaging you in the first place, or they wouldn't be looking to hire off of the job board if they didn't have a void and they didn't have an issue. So it's up to us to figure out what that is, and not just go in and, to Clark's point, spew all of our features and benefits, because half of what we're talking about may not be important to them. They may not care about it, and it really could turn them off. So this is a great mindset slide to have to guide you through, I think, in a complete entire client relationship from beginning to end.
Exactly. And we talked about discovery and qualifying discovery calls and qualifying business in, the live that we did in June, which is, available probably on both our pages. Excuse me, both our pages if you look at the event on each of our profiles. But so we don't necessarily have to go into that piece today, but this is just kind of a good reminder of, the things to kind of think about beyond just, pitching your services. Find out this, and then you can kind of figure out what your pitch is.
Exactly. You can craft it and tailor it, right? And our pitch should be customized to what it is they're struggling with, right?
Exactly. Well, excuse me for a second, a little frog in my throat. But so authenticity in client relationships. And I really wanted to highlight this slide because clients trust equals when they believe you have a genuine interest in their business and them. But this can be tough to build at first. I know for me, when I started Aerotech in sales, I got promoted pretty quick. I thought I was, this hotshot recruiter. I got into sales. I was like, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to be so good. And that first year, without kind of the safety net of my manager being being with me on meetings and me going up by myself, how almost like stiff and robotic I was, and I wasn't myself. And this is one of the things that now I kind of coach through and help my clients with, of just figuring out the frameworks, the questions, but it's okay to be yourself. I think there was something in me that maybe it was the pressure of hitting my numbers or trying to hit, my spread goals or whatever it was. I felt kind of robotic. I think I was so worried about my pitch or having, the answers or getting my stuff, across, that I really had to learn to just be myself in a business sense. I don't know if that was a challenge for you when you were kind of first starting, or you kind of had it organically, but that was one of the big hurdles.
I love how you said that, Clark. It's like, we have our, our scripts in front of us, right? I did back in my, K-Force days, and you have your scripts, and what you find is, to your point, you don't want to be sitting there reading a script. You want to, have it guide you so you don't forget your questions, but you truly have to put your authenticity, your genuineness, and your personality into it, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to have a two-way conversation to build a relationship with them. If you have them under the interrogation lamp, as I call it, with a little light bulb hanging on the string over their head, that's going to come across. It's going to make them be uncomfortable. So it's being able to, have the questions, know the mechanics, use it as a guideline. But again, being yourself and that honesty component. There's been many times, I don't know about you, Clark, especially in the early days, where and even today, someone can throw something at you, and there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I don't know the answer to this, but let me do my best to find out, what I can for you. Let me get with someone who I think could be, a good resource to answer that question, or let me refer you to someone who can, and go and do a little bit of legwork for them. They really appreciate that so much more than us trying to go and fumble and bumble and try to create some answer that totally is false, that almost exposes us for being a fraud versus being honest in the first place and just saying, hey, I don't know, let me figure it out. So again, I think that just falls in line with what you're saying in terms of genuine and authentic, and not knowing is okay as long as we're helping them find the answer.
Exactly. And I think part of what helped is I started to understand my role in the process. And I think it's important for salespeople of your job is not to fix their whole business. Your job is for you and your team, if you have a team, to be great matchmakers. And to figure that out, you have to get to know them, you have to know your candidates, but you kind of establish that you do know the candidate pool, right? And the whole goal is to make a match. And I mean, I think one of the ways this comes across and that's helped me be more authentic is instead of being like, oh, I can get you someone the best person in a day. I was like, we figured out this role together, like what you need and why. And I can present you with what the options, like what the ideal person, what their feedback is about the role as it's presented. And just that switch alone, and it just helped me be more authentic because it was more realistic instead of trying to make these like, I have to be perfect. I have to have speed. And how do I win out from the competition? I figured out the landscape and how they thought of other recruiters and realized other recruiters can get resumes quickly too. And I could as well, but not everyone is comfortable saying like, well, let's like figure this out together. It's like, no, we're just going to like do everything perfectly without really actually knowing what we're doing. And I think that helped me actually be like, oh, I can be authentic if I'm saying things that are true.
Yeah, I think, Clark, the key word, it's manage expectations. And that's something that I was taught early on in staffing, manage expectations. So they're not expecting that you're going to go get them a candidate, a perfect candidate in 24-hour turnaround. Because if you overpromise and underdeliver, you fail, right? That's what they'll remember, and they'll move on from you and go to somebody else. So I think that's the first thing that I was taught. And it goes through everything in life, from what if you're working a desk all the way through, senior leadership, everything. Manage expectations for candidates and clients, kind of explain to them what the process is going to look like, what is typical, what we are signing up for. So again, there's no surprises, right? No one wants surprises in business. That's a fact.
Exactly. And so we'll go into why the relationship development is so key. And we've touched on this, right? When you're selling staffing or recruiting, right? It's you and your team and your network, right? That's ultimately what you're selling. This is why, owners get so worked up about non-competes and all that, because they know the bread and butter is the team member, not them.
The relationship.
And it's the relationship. And so, again, going back to that initial slide of 19% of people actually think salespeople are valuable, that's the huge opportunity in all this. Is so much of it does come down to you and your approach. You have so much control over this, especially maybe in a tough market. Like that's the opportunity, right? To build that repeat business, to build that loyalty. It does come down to you, right? And understanding, why, what do they get by working with you, right? And knowing that each person in your network, a client, a candidate, anyone can become a referral. Like there's so many staffing firms, like how are you standing out, right? Are you, as we talk about following up with people and all that stuff, right? True to your word. I mean, that's all the things like you have control over.
Yeah, because you're right, Clark. I mean, we've seen throughout the years in this industry, can't tell you how many times that candidates become clients and buy from us. Clients move on and become candidates. They walk us into other, referrals with customers, or again, refer their fellow developers to us. So, realizing that whatever it is you do, it's not in a vacuum, right? It is. We're not selling. It's not in a vacuum. We're selling, as you said, ourselves, right? And with that, how you conduct and how deep you're able to build relationships with that long-term mindset usually is what ends up dictating how easy your job gets. Are you getting more client referrals? Are you getting more candidate referrals? Are you getting people to walk you into clients? And that's really, I think, a key barometer of your success. Is what you're doing to build relationships, is it working? And I think that bullet right there, where they introduce you to candidates, clients, and other referrals, that right there to me is one of the litmus tests of success, if you're doing it right or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're not selling widgets, right? We're selling our service. We're selling our service that they rely on us to deliver people to them. So it's less tangible than, going out and selling a car or selling furniture or something like that. So really important.
It's all that nuance and communication, which can be
Yeah,
intimidating at first and a lot to grasp in the beginning because there are so many different nuances. But again, showing that you're willing to work through that, and we're going to get into communication big time. I mean, that's a huge part of it. And with that said, though, right,
yeah,
we've talked about a lot about interpersonal skills already, but at some point, you do have to have quantifiable results, right, that you can
absolutely.
deliver for their business. If they're going to keep paying fees, whether that's bill rates or direct hire fees, whatever that looks like, or your RPO, that you got to be able to show some quantifiable results, right?
Yeah,
What's the first way to do that? Well, you got to find the pain,
yep.
right? We have to find the current pain. We have to find the consequences of them not making certain hires. What revenue are they missing out on? What business goals are they not hitting because of that? If their turnover, say with a general labor department, is, they only retain 30% and they want to get to 60, 70%, but how do you reverse engineer that? How do you dig in? So you got to find that stuff out on the front end, right? To be able to quantify when you come in and have an impact, kind of the benefit of that change in vendors and working with you.
Yeah, it's like to the point of the prior side, what results can you deliver for them? And I think this is where the customization comes in, Clark, right? So whatever industry and or skill set that they're in, you need to be able to show that you're a student of that industry and that you have proven results in that industry with that skill set because it's strong, right? To say that, for instance, you've worked in government solutions before and delivered IT security people. That makes you that staffing specialist and not that staffing generalist, right? So they're going to have a lot more faith and confidence in working with you because at this point, you're a specialist in government solutions and IT security. They don't have to train you and teach you about their business. You already know it, and you've already produced results and a quantifiable outcome for them. So I think, again, as far as a mindset, the value prop that you have, it always should be what results can I deliver for this customer's business based on what I'm currently doing for them or based on what I've done for other customers that have similar industries, similar skill sets, and similar problems, right?
Exactly. And this is why I tell people that are struggling to niche down or own a niche, go to where you've been successful for the client and
Exactly.
pick that industry and double down. That reduces the friction and makes it more believable. You can
Yes.
speak on things better because if you try to be all things to everyone, especially if you're kind of climbing the hill still, good luck because then you're competing with everyone versus competing with a certain subset, and you can be a little bit more knowledgeable there. So I tell people, if you don't really have it niched down, like, do the homework, like, on your placements, on your wins, your insights, and be realistic. And just because you can do something doesn't mean it makes business sense to always do that or to market that, right? Double down and lean into your strengths, and and if you have a proof of concept with different searches and all that, double down on that. And sure, get the revenue, get the business to a place where it steadies out, and then maybe you can add other verticals. That's what all the big firms have done. That's how Aerotech started out, as
Mhm.
aviation engineers, and now look at, they have like 10 plus verticals, different business units, but they own what they did in the beginning and then expanded accordingly.
Yeah, that's great. I lead into every cold call, Clark, with leading into focusing on their industry and focusing on an issue that their industry is having and or a skill set, deficit that they're having. And it gets their attention, right? Because it's not, again, it's not generic. Because the days of the generic staffing vendor, I believe, are done. You're just going to be lumped into the commoditization pile if you're generic. And we know what that means. You end up competing on price. And that's never a winning strategy. And then you mentioned, Aerotech, right? How they double down on the whole engineering piece. Same thing as well, like healthcare companies. I think the healthcare staffing companies, at least the ones I work with, they're wildly successful because again, they're so niche specific, right? And RNs and inpatient coders and things like that. They understand, the issues around that industry, and then they understand how to find the people and how to go and solve those specific type of problems within the healthcare industry. So yeah, kind of, we're both saying the same thing. Double down on an industry and a skill set and understand the problems that they're having and how you're going to solve that pain.
Yeah, and these two sides kind of play off each other pretty well.
Yeah.
Again, these are the ways to do it, and your point in the cold call, the cold email, LinkedIn, how are your hiring efforts going? Or I saw you had this job posting for open for 3 months. Instead of saying, "Hey, can I work on this?" You're like, "What have you guys done to try to fill this role?" Right? Or did you just leave the job posting open? On LinkedIn, sometimes they get free job postings, sometimes they don't. On Indeed, they probably definitely don't. So you're like, "Hey, I can impact this role. I have a perfect candidate." Get curious, right? How is this impacting this open role? Some people would be like, "Oh yeah, we forgot to close that," but some people are like, "We have no idea what we're doing." We have 2 other agencies on it and all that, but I have no one, and then what are the consequences of it? Right? Just find the pain always in all your communication with prospects, with clients, it just
Yeah.
you focus on that versus pitching, right, constantly, you have to have enough volume, but you do that with enough people, you're gonna get the intel you need, and it's gonna start to become clear on who to really build that relationship and those that rapport with.
Yeah. And Clark, one thing we forgot on this slide, that I definitely, just popped into my head. I started to ask, at some point throughout my career, who is your top supplier now, and why? And then just sat back and listened. And it was really telling to me to determine, what made the supplier number one and what was making us at, number 15 or whatever it was we were. And it helped me identify again the gaps and the issues and potentially the problems and areas of opportunities of what my company and me could do to kind of get to that top supplier spot. But that was really telling. Is it's not asking, well, what makes a good supplier? Is who's number one and why? What are they doing? And that was really like cold water in the face in some instances, but it was eye opening, and it helped guide our next moves.
Absolutely, yeah, it's easy to kind of cover of like they probably had negative experiences, but also asking have they had positive experiences, and that could be internal or external,
Yeah.
as well. So great point. So this is one of my favorite things in terms of building the client relationship was actually when I developed a better relationship with my recruiting team, and a better communication understanding. And when we became aligned on niche, because I've kind of stuck at, I had gone up and I kind of got stuck in the beginning of the year at 4K after the holiday season in January, and I was just sick and tired of kind of the spray and pray approach a little bit that we had. So I was like, we'll double down on our top 5 skill sets. So you guys are going to build networks, 10 to 15 people that are hireable, and that's all you're going to have. So we had 50, 60 people, each of them, so 100 total, that were employable. Like that's what they built in Q1. And then my job was just to get out, with references, resumes, contracts, and just pitch the active people that were top 5 skill sets that we knew companies in our area, our territory, were pretty much always going to be hiring for. Right, we looked at food production. I think we looked at kind of plastic manufacturing, and some warehouse and logistics, and that's kind of the sweet spot for us in that area. It gave me so much more confidence in meetings, and I knew I could deliver in speed and quality because I was presenting it to them, the quality and the speed. So I was able to sign agreements, get interviews the same day or the next day. And once we were able to kind of really build that and kind of hone in, and that was, I would say, starting my second full year in sales. Then we went from 4 to 16K in spread, in weekly spread, in just a matter of like 4 months. And like that was, eh, again, in a tough territory where we had to be a premium pricing because our burdens were higher than our competitors. So we were getting 60%, 70, 85%. I mean, I was getting 30% direct hire fees for maintenance mechanics, like because of how honed in we were. And it started with getting on the same page with my recruiting team and having a high standard of the candidates and all that we wanted to present, and kind of putting that in front of the prospects. We really dialed it in, and that allowed the really client relationship to start to really blossom.
Yeah. And Clark, you make a great point. Both you and I work for large companies. Of course, it did have high burden structures that typically large staffing companies do, right? Have to support all those back office functions. But with that, you and I didn't have the luxury of, being able to go in and compete on price. And we never want to do that anyway. We had to go in, to your point, and compete on value and compete on quality and all these other factors that the customer wanted. We could never go in as the low cost provider, or, nor would we want to. But I know some companies do use that, and they become, again, commoditized. But I think it was because we had to go and hit a high burden structure and had to have high markups. I think maybe it taught us, me and you, to go in with a different vantage point, right? Pitching the value, pitching the quality, and the right kind of candidates, and customized to their industry problems. We didn't have the luxury of being able to offer low rates.
We certainly didn't. And you get looked at if you had low margins and low spread. We had team meetings twice a day,
Yeah.
office meetings twice a day. You get looked at funny if you did. And you had stuff, and no one really wanted to work on it. So
Exactly.
it kind of built and forged those habits. I think is really important, and I think there's important for recruiters, especially newer recruiters, or ones that maybe started the last few years, especially that they kind of had the luxury of digital tools and Zoom meetings and all that stuff. Of like, this is the next level, like the value based relationship, and people have been doing this for decades in this industry. So like, go seek out that mentorship, invest in that mentorship of people that have been in the industry, that know it, that know how to have a value-based sell and value-based relationships, because a commoditized, it's nothing new and it's something special.
Yeah, we don't want to be the Walmart of staffing, because what that is, it's a race to the bottom. If you're trying to just compete on the price, then they think it's paper clipped, right? And next thing you know, the client is lowering your price even more and more and more, and then the competition swoops in, and it's a race to the bottom. You're never going to win that way. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's go into communication,
the
because
fun stuff. Yes.
This is definitely the fun stuff, and I know we probably mentioned a couple of the lives that we've done, but the regular contact schedule. Ask them how they like to communicate. Mm-hmm. Some are texters, some are phone calls, some are emails, some like LinkedIn. It's a little thing, it's a simple thing, it's a huge thing. How annoying is it, Kim, when someone maybe hits us up on a medium constantly that we don't check? And I'm like, just send me a text, please.
Yes.
Or something, because I don't mind. Like, it's easy for me to kind of to see or to follow back up on. I started doing that with managers, and I was like, okay, like, I'm here to communicate with you how you prefer, because I know you're busy and I know you got a lot going on, and we've established that you want to make sure that you see what I'm saying and updating you on, and vice versa. So why not?
Yeah, love it. Asking them, and that's, hey, in my earlier days, I never asked that question, and that was much to my own fault, because like you said, you send an email, and let's say they're a customer just hitting the delete button, they may not even see it. And ultimately, what I go for these days is, I really do want to try a text, right? There's some stat out there about how much more often, quickly a text is read versus an email, and a text can actually tend to linger a little bit versus hitting that delete button on email. So yeah, how do they want to communicate? And then, we talk about video obviously being, Zoom and things like that, but a lot of the folks that I teach, and I'm starting to do more of it too, starting to actually send video snippets to keep in touch, right? Loom is a great tool, or at least it's the tool that I've used. Send a quick video to follow up with somebody. It's right now, it's still a little bit different. Not everybody's doing it. And again, it just puts your face and your voice top of mind with them, right? And Clark, to one point here, the phone. So many people don't leave messages today. They just rely on that email. It's actually become almost a novelty to leave a voicemail so they can hear your voice, because so many people aren't doing it. I can say that any given month, I probably get 3 people maybe that leave me a phone message versus, just hundreds of email solicitations, every single week. No one's leaving voicemails. So again, video and your voice and things like that, not everybody's doing it. So take a look at
it. Absolutely. I mean, honestly, probably something I might look to incorporate more, even on the coaching side, and checking in with people. Because I don't love email. I like text. Obviously, I like LinkedIn as well, but definitely text and phone is my favorite. And I don't mind building that rapport. If I'm going to be in a coaching partnership anyway, we're going to use the phone and text. So it's like you want to use the medium that you're going to be using, especially when you're an established vendor and going back and forth, and have active roles that you're working on, and candidates working, and out on placement. So
and let's not forget in person, Clark. You and I, I think that's really how we built our businesses, early on, that in person, face to face. And I think with COVID, people got kind of a little, complacent in not doing that. And there's nothing that replaces face to face interaction. If you can do it, do it. It's so strong in terms of building the rapport, but also finding out information. I always say, my phone just didn't ring off the desk, when I was sitting there with people handing me business. Where I learned about business, or where I got business and picked up jobs and projects, when I was on site in person. To me, that's still the absolute strongest, best method of communication. It works every single time.
Absolutely. And I think part of how you get that, because people are like, "What do I follow up?" and all that. I'm like, the notes, that slide, that bullet right there, track quality notes from the beginning, right? That comes from asking quality
Mhm.
questions and doing the right digging. You can get enough information on a discovery call to have a follow up for the next year or two, right? If you're asking the right questions, if you're understanding who they like to work with, who they don't like to work with, the hiring needs, the consequences, the business goals. You learn something about them personally, right? You can have so much stuff to kind of follow up with. If you're placing people, get feedback on your candidate's performance, on your performance, right? Set up those
Mhm.
quarterly business reviews, right? There's so many different opportunities. And then the last bullet here, you could do that in different ways. It could be an in-person meeting. You could do donut drops. You could bring lunch. You could take them to lunch. You could do happy hour, right? Entertainment opportunities. A lot of that stuff is probably reserved for people that have already paid you before, right? Because they made a 20, 30K placement fee. You could spend a couple $100 on them, right? And taking them out. Like that's well worth the ROI. And stuff like that reaps so many rewards because it's the top of the top that are actually doing that with hiring managers.
Exactly. And you know what? Hold yourself accountable to that last bullet is what I'd say. Put a metric on it, right? Challenge yourself to say, okay, if I'm doing, one lunch a week, up it 2 lunches a week, right? Or 2 lunches a week and a certain, maybe a nighttime event, per month. Whatever you're doing now, challenge yourself to go and up it by one, up it by two from an in-person standpoint, because really the dividends are there if you do it consistently. And Clark, I like the mid bullets. They're great opportunities to determine, hey, how are we doing? What could we do better? And the client will tell you. They will tell you, and they'll actually
Yeah.
respect the fact that you guys have got a good relationship, a partnership, advisory partnership going, because you're asking how you can get better. Right? It's a quality conversation versus just hey, how you doing? Right?
A little courage goes a long way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you have to be prepared for the answers. That's a fact.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Facing the music. And I don't know if we have that on here, but it's a little bit of part two, especially on the right, kind of facing the music. But I would make sure you're caught up in the industry, own your vertical, become an expert matchmaker. Right, I was placing mechanics. I wasn't an expert mechanic, but I knew how to match mechanics to the right company. Right, remember that. That's what we're here for, and that's the gap. That's what we're solving in the hiring process is
Yeah.
that matchmaker, because clients and candidates screw it up all the time, right? Clients try to recruit and are on job boards and have no idea what they're doing. Candidates don't really know how to present themselves, maybe, or their resume is kind of a mess. So it could be such an important buffer, and just to realize that that's what you're owning in the process, right? You don't need to be anything else but that, and that's enough, right? And so part of that, right? Do you have high submittal standards, right? Don't always push back on every candidate. Sometimes the client is right in terms of why they don't want to proceed with a candidate, right? You got to pick your battles, but you also have to set your own boundaries and own those boundaries. They will respect you, right? People want to work with people that they like for sure, but more importantly, that they respect and that can come through.
Yeah, and actually, Clark, one thing we talked about becoming a specialist in the industry and double downing on that. Like you said, you wouldn't go to a dermatologist to change the oil in your car, right? So,
Yeah.
but if let's say you're trying to become that industry specialist, you're trying to educate yourself. There's so much out there online that can help you, right? You could Google. Let's say you're trying to become a specialist in IT security. There's all kinds of different publications out there, like I think Dark Horse or Dark Reading, and all these different publications that they list that will help you be able to go out and read really quickly and start to pick up some of the trends in the industry, or even Googling or even ChatGPT. What are the 10 top driving issues right now in IT security? What are the 10 top challenges in construction? Whatever it is, the info's out there. So, you don't have to just, fabricate this. You can go and research and pretty quickly find out what's going on in the industry, what the challenges are, and what some of the experts are saying, how to face them, so you can start to have those intelligent conversations with your clients.
Yeah. And one of the things to add to that is because you made me think of it. You're like, what are the top 10 issues in IT staffing? kind of the other side of it, and humor, it can be a double-edged sword, but lean into the fact that if they're in IT, they're getting hit up by everyone. Like everyone, I think just like, hey, I'm sure I'm like that 15th recruiter that you've talked to this
Yeah.
week, or that's trying to reach out and maybe do this more kind of on meetings or whatever, right? Like just acknowledge the fact, and we're gonna kind of cover this, I think, on the last slide, but just like they have a lot of options, right? And I think sometimes even when you communicate that, you understand that it can be really important. And I think that's also what you're subconsciously communicating with all this. But you can also kind of call out the elephant in the room when you communicate and be like, you could work with a lot of people. I know you get hit up all the time. And kind of part of the feedback from before is like, why, you could work with anyone else. Like, why us? Right.
Yeah.
And all
It's
that doesn't always have
acknowledging
to be
it.
looked. Yeah.
Yeah. Acknowledging it and kind of aligning it. I love how you said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to talk about
Client
is
expansion. I know it's a little bit. We covered a lot of this in the retention live we did last month. But I mean, I know this is one of your favorite slides.
yeah.
Expanding reach. Existing contacts. Can they make introductions? Do they know that we could do other things? Can we be exclusive? Show the benefits to that of working with one agency, not multiple agency. Do they know the services we provided elsewhere in the past? I mean, this is one of the ways to build rapport, because the amount of times that clients just don't know, or our managers don't know what else we can actually do, is amazing. Yeah, I'll let you
Yeah.
kind of take the reins on this one.
Oh yeah, this is, like I said, it's my favorite one. We don't want to become that one hit wonder, right? Because if you're a one hit
Right.
wonder, you make one placement, let's face it, you're expendable and you're not relevant or significant to them. When we actually go into their organization and we start to service them, let's say you're in IT, in application development, network infrastructure, the PMO, quality assurance, BAs, all that. Once you start to go and expand your reach into multiple departments and teams and make placements, you start to gain significance and relevance to their business model, right? It's like, oh gosh, well, we're going to call Clark because we know he's the expert at building out a PMO. We know that he's the expert at IT security or whatever it is. So again, don't be that one hit wonder. We want to go and get into every single applicable department that we can service, right? And know all the leaders there and start to make placements. And I see companies oftentimes forget to explain. We get in our silo, we do permanent direct hire. Well, they forget to also explain that they do contract and contract to hire. So make certain that we're offering up to them our full suite of services and that they can buy from us in those different ways, right? And Clark, of course, mentioned exclusivity. But I think that last bullet is one that we take for granted is staffing recruiting professionals. We think that they know and they remember everything that we've done for them or the accomplishments that we've had. I like to, again, in those business reviews, kind of highlight that for them. Hey, we did go and give you a tier 2 IT service desk, and we were able to successfully put 15 people on. And hey, we were able last year to give you, 12 Java developers for your software go live. So again, kind of just reinforcing and reiterating some things the results that we have delivered in the past, because they're probably not going to remember all of them. But again, take this away from it. The more significant you are, the more you expand and penetrate the account, the more relevant you become to them, and it's harder for them to extract you out of their business, right? It's like you are not expendable. The more relevance you have and the more expansion you have into all their departments. So it's probably my favorite slide.
It's I know I love it, and we're gonna go into my favorite sides, which is, I think, another way to have kind of client expansion, which is marketing. And this is what I love more than anything, is some good old fashioned marketing. We talked about LinkedIn content where you can highlight wins and insights and your knowledge. And again, if you post more than once a week, you're in the top 99% of LinkedIn creators. Yes, that's a real stat. That's how you stand out from 99.5% of agencies, right? You want to fish where the fish are, right? It's a way to stay top of mind. Hiring managers, they're on LinkedIn for the most part. Even for like light industrial type jobs, they're still posting. I saw a company yesterday post all their light industrial jobs. Of course, they have 0 applicants on LinkedIn, but someone is posting that job.
Mm-hmm.
And this was an internal. This wasn't a staffing company. Someone internally is posting that job and is supposed to check that. That means that they're on LinkedIn. So for almost all the agencies, hiring managers are on LinkedIn. Candidates, maybe not at all, not as much, although more than you might think. But like, this is where again, you fish where the fish are. You can stand out. You have the about section on your LinkedIn profile. You have content. You can leverage automation. You can connect with your ICP every single day, dozens of them every single day. You can engage in their posts and their comments. There is no excuse in 2024 to not be doing this. If you're trying to build new relationships, if you're trying to enhance like the current ones, I can't tell you how many agency owners that have a local presence have gone through the program, have posted content and kind of the way that we teach, which is a lot more engaging and sharing stories, and it's just a lot better win content and meant for social media. And they're like, I can't believe your content. Are you writing on your own? Did someone teach you? Is someone doing it for you? Like, I love your content. It's reactivated old clients. They've been able to raise rates with old clients and relationships, building new connections. People go to local events, connect with them on LinkedIn, and they see your content and realize, like, wow, you're a legitimate recruiter. You have something interesting to say and add, and it expedites the ability for that relationship to strengthen. And it's a huge advantage, especially if you're newer. You can expedite your client relationship building, but also if you've been at this a little bit, you can really amplify and stay top of mind. And kind of that previous slide, right? You can share kind of other things that you've done without kind of maybe shoving it down their throat. And they're like, from afar, they're like, I didn't realize Kim could do that. Right. Versus like you spent all that time trying to get that across in the meetings and setting meetings and all that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. This number one, you're right, Clark. This makes it, number one, it's free, right? It costs us nothing to do. All it is really planning, being able to plan your day and plan time to do this, right? And it's really not that hard to establish yourself as a thought leader by doing this versus just kind of a run-of-the-mill recruiting, staffing agency person. And I have to say, full admission on this, from mistakes of the past. I in the past didn't use LinkedIn, right? It was just more of you used to farm it for leads and then get on the phone, call them, do all your traditional BD. So when I started to incorporate this into how I do my job about a year ago, about a year and a month ago. And I'll admit, I was skeptical, right? I'm like, oh, geez, here we go. Is this really going to work? And to that point, I'm actually here to tell you, it will draw people to you. It will draw business to you. It will make your outreach so much easier because you'll start to comment when clients and prospects post or their jobs, and then they'll start to it's another touch point where they'll see, there's Clark, there's Kim. So when you reach out again, it's like, oh yeah, you comment on my jobs, you comment on this, you post about this. It's almost like it's not cold anymore. It becomes a little bit more of a warm outreach, which makes our job so much easier. So I'm here to tell you that I was probably again a year ago a little bit of a late adopter to this, but it proved itself to me. It does work. Again, it doesn't take the place of everything else that we've talked about. I'll call it again, it's one leg in the strategy of the whole sales stool. So it's free. It's not that hard. So I'd say, jump on board because I'm a believer now. And a year ago, I was like, I was skeptical on it, but it will work if you're religious and consistent with it.
It's easy to publish. I would say it's harder to have quality, right? Because you can get in the marketing trap of posting content that's actually not relevant to your ICP. So if you don't really know what you're doing,
good point.
Go learn what you're doing first, because there are people that have figured it out, myself included, our program. You figured it out as well, and kind of I think your lane of the marketing and giving a ton of value like this, right? And like you have that, and you're on podcasts, you do different lives. Like find your lane of stuff that works. But like again, you studied it, you learned it. I would say it's easy to put yourself out there, but make sure, because to your point, you're drawing the right people in, Kim, because your marketing is hitting the message of you, what is an ideal client for you. And I think I see this sometimes where recruiters will post, and they'll actually be talking to other recruiters, right? They'll follow what you and I are doing and talk to other recruiters versus actually talking to their market, or they'll talk to candidates only. And make sure in your marketing, what I always say, if you talk to candidates, you're going to get just candidates. But if you talk to clients and candidates, you're going to get both. Or excuse me, you talk to clients, you're going to get clients and candidates. And so remember that. And so again, if you don't know how to do that, you can't quite figure it out, go get training on it. It's out there. You and I both do it and both can help with that. But like that is a crucial part. But man, great marketing, especially organic marketing, free as you call it, that makes sales a whole heck of a lot easier.
Yeah. And you know what too? And when it comes to like even articles to go and post, I mean, I was looking out there the other day. I use SHRM.org whenever it comes to, hiring and talent, issues or regulations, things that are talking about the whole industry of talent acquisition. And I'll send a lot of good articles to my clients and my prospects when it's something that makes sense. Like, oh, here's a new ruling on independent contractors, right? So that's a great free resource. And then I noticed things like Forbes. If you drill down, they have specific newsletters you can sign up for, again, free for under CIO, CFO, CMO, and leadership. And then so therefore it would all be curated content. Articles that would come to you about, issues within technology or issues within that a CFO, financial officer would have. So it's curated content that's more targeted that can help you if you're struggling to try to figure out what articles to send, what would be good content. So it's a good way to cheat. There's a lot of free newsletters you can sign up for that are targeted to specific type individuals within the industries we service.
And I think you're diving into the educated informed, piece that we have here: in-person events, webinars, in-person trainings. Can you give them some retention strategy? Where can you really be a consultant? What value adds? Kim, as you just said, there's so many different articles and insights, what could be relevant, and we can be better with that once we get all the information that we talked about in the beginning, right? Asking the right question, that discovery, the market insights. Could you give them compensation reports? How do you help people that maybe are hiring managers that are looking for a job? I just recorded a Loom yesterday and turned it into a whole document for a client that I'm going to share with all the other members in the program of step by step. You can teach them what you learned in Digital Recruiter: LinkedIn profile, Sales Navigator, Dripify, content, right? You can use that to help, have a better presence in terms of getting a job as a candidate. You can shoot a Loom video, give them PDF, have the video in there. And anyone that's like, I'm actually looking, it's like, hey, here's a free resource I made to kind of help you expedite your job search in the digital age. You don't have to get on a call. You don't have to talk to all those people. But people are going to come to you as a recruiter that are hiring manager now, that are a candidate now, maybe a client later. And they're not going to forget you if you give them a value add that maybe took you 5 to 10 minutes to make. And that opened their eyes, because a lot of people don't know how to update their resume or their LinkedIn or what they should say or how to do it. So, again, there's so many different ways to do that. And you just got to get, a little bit creative. And you can add a ton of value. And that ROI can be infinite.
Yeah, and guys, don't overlook the fact that you could even do a LinkedIn Live with your clients and your prospects, right? Because let's face it, they're not experts on hiring, we are, and maybe they're struggling with what to even ask candidates on an interview. We could go and do a LinkedIn Live and basically say, hey, sign up. We're going to tell you about how to interview candidates better, right? Here are questions to ask. Here's how to progress an interview from the beginning to the end. So again, LinkedIn Lives or webinars can be strong. Your webinars take a little longer to set up, but do a LinkedIn Live for your clients with an issue or problem that you know that they're having. Go on LinkedIn, advertise it, and get them to sign up. They're going to remember, because again, to Clark's point, you're handing out value, you're handing out information that's going to help them, right? And you're not charging them for it. So we know the issues. Maybe go live on LinkedIn and try to go work through a problem with them.
Absolutely. All good stuff. And now we'll get into, I guess probably my most important, my favorite side, maybe even before marketing actually, is the trust and gratitude of be dependable, be reliable, keep your word, be realistic, under promise, over deliver. We've talked about that throughout, the 50 minutes that we've been doing this. One of the things I added: be vocal, but don't be cheesy about your appreciation, right? It can come from the heart. I tell my clients, my best clients, I wish I had 100. My goal is to have 100 more clients like you. If I do that, I mean, life is good for me. I tell my clients that. I told them that in staffing and recruiting. I tell them now in coaching. I let them know let them know that they're appreciated, and that especially if you set expectations with them and that they're falling in line with giving prompt feedback and prompt offers and good offers and not yanking your chain or your candidate's chain, let them know they're going to get your best work and that you appreciate that, right? And I think it's just a huge piece of it, even before maybe you even work with them. Let them know, hey, appreciate the conversation and appreciate you kind of sharing kind of what the hiring goals are. And I hope, we can make an impact, sometime soon. That's good to do.
Yeah. We're trying to your point, we're trying to move from that supplier vendor status and move to trusted advisor status, right? We're going to go from vendor to advisor. And that's the way I look at it. Am I their advisor, not only in hiring, but in helping them solve some of their business problems that I think fits in with this slide, overall mindset. And again, never overlook the power of a handwritten thank you card in 2024. It's rare, people don't do it. And I know that when clients receive those, they'll comment on, they'll appreciate it actually, and they'll sometimes put the thank you card on their desk. So never underestimate a handwritten thank you from the old days. It can be
authenticity. Authenticity goes a long way right now, in a world of a lot of noise and a lot of just things that you can't trust. So it goes a long way. Well, cool. Well, let's wrap this up because this hour's kind of flown by. Conclusion for me, get reps. Don't expect to be perfect right away. Be curious. Learn about them. Learn about your prospects. Do that at volume. Take the initiative. Be proactive. Don't be reactive in terms of communication, logistics, getting feedback. Right, kind of just pushing the issue. Streamline that communication, keep the pulse of the market and your placements. Marketing keeps you top of mind. Anything that you want to add, Kim?
Yeah, I think just one thing, we talked a lot on this about adding value, becoming a student of their business and all these things that can add value beyond just handing them a person as a placement. If you don't know, ask them, right? How do they define value? What would be valuable to them for you to provide, right? Other than, giving them a CPA or whatever it is that we're selling from a recruiting standpoint. They will tell you what they need and what they're after, what their challenges. So always ask them, hey, what would be valuable to you? I'm here for more than just to go and give you CPAs or Java developers. So ask the question.
Great way to end it. Well, that does it for us today. Again, thank you for tuning in. Kim, thank you again for partnering up with me.
All right.
Adding all your wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, great. No, I love this, Clark. And hopefully, the folks that were on with us today could take a couple insights back and action them out on their desk and kind of apply it to their desk, to get a little more consistent and maybe do something, look at their business a little bit differently, right? And hopefully get a different outcome than what they were, get a better outcome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, again, connect with us on LinkedIn if you haven't already. If you got questions about kind of what we do, feel free to shoot us each a message. I know Kim and I both have like newsletters and emails that you could opt into. We both of us have courses and live trainings and coaching that we do. Connect with us, message us. We're here to help. We've both had great managers and mentors in our day. We try to be that for recruiters and salespeople in the industry now. And we'd love to kind of help you get to that next level where you want to go. So again, thanks for tuning in. This recording will be on LinkedIn for a little bit. It'll be on the YouTube channel, Digital Recruiter YouTube channel. So subscribe to that. We'll probably get it posted on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at some point too. And that's all I got. Thanks, Kim.
All right. Thank you, Clark. Thank you, everybody. Great to be here.